Hmm. Oh, I'm on and off because what's it called? My computer is really bad. I don't even. Yeah. It's been getting really scuffed lately. Yeah, my desktop audio is completely fucked. Because now I can't. I went from hearing everything from my headphones to hearing nothing. I don't know what the deal is. Yeah. Oh, I think it just muted. I think I'm good now. Hold on. Wait. Hmm. I think I need to click on stuff. No, it's completely not playing audio at all. My computer. Hold on. Let me. Oh, I think it did something just a moment ago. What was that? Is it playing the audio from the game? Oh, now it is. Okay. I can kind of live with this. All right. Hmm. Hmm. One more time. Let's do this. There we go. All right. Come on. Oh, that didn't work. That just worked for me. There we go. Now we're cooking with fire. Good. It doesn't seem like anyone's here. So, aside from Amana and maybe some other folks. All right. Now everything's for good. It was a little jank at first, but now we're here. Let us continue. All right, 22nd February. No, 21st February, 7:18 a.m. Mr. Natsume's lodgings, ground floor. Talk about the ground. Mm. Oh. What on earth? Oh my, the gentleman's deceased, without question. He's dead. Oh, welcome student, Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. Mr. Natsume. Oh, why? Why is this happening? Why to me? I've only just got out of court yesterday. I was finally home after 2 days of misery. And when I wake up next to this, no early bird should catch some worm like this. Waffle worm without wiggle. I see you're in high spirits again this morning, Mr. Mustache. Ah! Not the horrible Herlock Sholmes. Shoo! Shove off! Show yourself the door! I never invited you! Mr. Shomes came here with us. I'm quite sure he'll be able to help you, Mr. Natsume. I am entirely at your disposal, Mr. Mustache. What can I do for you? Ah! Oh, Tobias is here too. Here they are, already the busy boys. Ah, Inspector Gregson. What a pleasant surprise. Pleasant, is it? Gives me heartburn every time I see your face at the crime scene, Sholmes. I deduce, Inspector, that your heartburn is the result of your excessive consumption of fried food. Good morning, Inspector. It's a crime scene. Don't go touching anything. Oh, good morning to you, Sunshine. Let's see. What are we going to start with? Let us examine what's going on. This is, Wait! I said hands off! You're gonna mess up the crime scene. Oh, no, I just wanted to look. That's all. No chance. I know your kind. You mess it up just by looking at it. Someone's in a bad mood. There's certainly some bad air in here, isn't there? Alright. Sounds like I'd better talk to the inspector first. Try to curry some favor. So, Inspector, what was the victim's name? Who was he? Mr. William Shamsby. He was a lodger here. As you can probably tell, he was an actor. A bit of a dead loss, as it happens. But he's dead. Mr. Shamsby. It was the landlord, old Garadeb, and the other lodger, Mr. Natsume, who found him. The fella didn't rise at his usual hour, so Garadeb got worried and kicked the door down. But doesn't Mr. Garadeb have a bad leg? Oh yeah, you're right there. It was that jittering Japanese hunchback over there who did the kicking. Really? Saseki-san? The victim was kind of pretty hard up, it seems. Even done some time inside for petty crimes. Yeah, the family acquaintances were people in this house. Miserable life and a miserable end to it. So, what exactly is Mr. Natsume doing there? He's not involved with the investigation, so shouldn't you have sent him away from the crime scene? Well, I'm not saying it's because the fella looks odd or anything, or that he acts suspicious. But I thought it'd be prudent to take a statement from the cohabiter. Man, you nearly said culprit there, didn't you? You're just trying to find somebody to put the cuffs on. Oh dear. Mr. Natsume appears to be under suspicion again. It certainly seems that way. He does just come across as such an odd fellow, doesn't he? Poor man. How unfortunate. Anyway, guess ain't much until the coroner gets here. But I don't think the fella's a goner that long. The body's still warm. Even if the inspector would allow it, I don't think I could bring myself to touch a dead body. Oh, that's just everything you said before. It's always funny to speed past everything, but with just the audio and no dialogue at all. What a terrible thing to happen. No, what a terrible thing to have happened. It's only been 3 days since I was arrested for the incident on the pavement outside. And then, having finally regained my freedom, it starts happening all over again. Endless existence of excruciating experiences. So the victim here lived here on the ground floor, and your room is just 1 story up, is it? Yes, that's right. In a way, we were neighbors, I suppose. So did you know the victim? Were you friends? What's the matter with Soseki-san now? It was an innocent enough question, wasn't it? Why does he seem so shaken up by it? Well, I suppose he wasn't a complete stranger. But did he ever invite me to his room? Never! On my honor, I swear it! What an extreme reaction. You're probably wishing you never asked now, aren't you, Mr. Naruhodo? When we found him here, I felt wretched, which is why I sent word asking you to come. Through that inspector over there! What are you doing? Are you gonna do like a fucking neck chop? Mr. Sholmes, what are you doing? Ah! You only observe to know it, my dear fellow. Investigating. Naturally. There's nothing natural about that pose. Mr. Sholmes, have you made some miraculous discovery? Patience, my dear madam, patience. We've not been here in this room 5 minutes. So far, all I managed to deduce is what actually happened. My goodness. But isn't that everything we need to know, Mr. Sholmes? Now that you propose the idea, I believe one could indeed see it that way. At the present time, I've managed to draw 2 incontrovertible conclusions. The first was that there was a physical struggle here last night, in which the victim fought for his life. Oh! Ah! Mr. Natsume, what's wrong? It's something that Mr. Sholmes said significant somehow? No, don't mind me. Forget I was here. And my second conclusion is that there was a poison lingering in the air here last night that passed the victim's lips. Nonsense! Alright, Mr. Natsume. Why are you reacting so extremely to Mr. Sholmes' deductions? No. Please, pretend I'm not here. Invisible, ineffable, inscrutable, insignificant. Impossible to ignore. You must tell us everything, Mr. Sholmes. Spare no detail. But of course, let the theatrical tragedy before us be unraveled by my great deductions, presented for your pleasure in 2 acts. We've heard some truly astounding great deductions from Mr. Sholmes in the past. No doubt this will be no exception. What miracles will unfold before our eyes this time? So, my dear fellows, for your delight and wonder, let the curtain rise. For Herlock Sholmes' logic and reasoning spectacular. Act 1. Careful observation of the victim reveals to us the events that transpired in this inconsolate room last night. Foam at the mouth of the deceased clearly indicates the use of poison. Next to the victim, we notice a large dining plate which contains, you will observe, 1/2 of a sizable bar of soap. Meaningful? Indubitably. Why is this soap set so purposefully upon the dish? Like the victim's last supper, in fact. Yes. Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course, the fork reveals the answer. It appears the young man's appetite was his undoing. Taking the arms in the form of his cutlery, the victim engaged in a deadly battle for his life. Yet the struggle against his hunger was in vain, for in the end he couldn't resist devouring the slippery feast. But London's foul soap is besmirched by foul poison. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the contents of the plate. The soap and the lather around the young man's mouth are too perfectly matched to ignore. The cause of death was clearly intoxication due to the excessive ingestion of foul soap. Though personally, I have a greater interest in the taste of foul candle wax, of course. Not Herlock admitting that he likes to eat candle wax in the process of all this. Like, you picked the wrong poison. You should have been eating candles. The cause of death identified. We proceed to Act 2, where we ponder the next question. Was this suicide or murder? The audience will recall that death occurred during the victim's last supper. Did the man dine and die alone? This single teacup suggests the answer. To draw the conclusion to such a meager evidence would be foolish, however, certainly. The careful criminal could have absconded with his own cup to cover his tracks. Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is a broken lock. Though forced open now, at the time of the incident, this door was locked. And the sole key was in the victim's pocket. In other words, when the victim consumed the poison, he must have been alone. Alone with his inferior soap, from whence wafted an inferior scent. And with that acrid aroma lingering in the air, the victim met his end in tragic solitude. We can take comfort only in the fact that his soul was well cleansed on the way to the hereafter. Thus concludes the final act of Herlock Sholmes' great deduction. There's just one thing, Mr. Sholmes. You are disposed to identifying just one thing, aren't you, Mr. Naruhodo? Pray, what concerns you? Well, no matter how hungry he was, do you really think a man would have eaten soap? It is quite apparent that this man had barely a penny to his name. It is a curious thing, but to one so destitute, a soap can suddenly appear quite irresistibly appetizing. How extraordinary. In truth, I have tried a little soap myself in the past. You've eaten it, you mean? My dear fellow, it was some time ago. My postulation was that it would cleanse my gut. And did it? As I writhed in agony on the floor and spilt the contents of my stomach. Yes, I believe it did. The experience taught me a valuable lesson. Soap is quite poisonous, and quite delicious too. It had an unpleasant taste, and leads to great discomfort. In summary, I cannot recommend it. Believe me, I wouldn't eat it even if you did. There is something that troubles me as well, actually. Oh? What's that? It's Mr. Natsume. Oh! I couldn't help but notice him shuddering and quivering out of the corner of my eye. Almost as if Mr. Shome's deductions touched a nerve somehow. Nonsense! Well, that clenched teeth episode didn't last. I think, judging by Mr. Natsume's reaction, the great detective's deductions may need some gentle corrections in order to reach the actual truth. Yes, Mr. Shome's observations and deductions are sometimes a little too sharp. He has a tendency to hit the nail on the side of the head and drive it at an obtuse angle. When he does that, it falls to us to straighten things out. Alright then, let's see what we can do. Yes, we can pick out the key words of Mr. Shome's quite brilliant deductions, and discreetly exchange them for something that makes a little more sense. If we can do that, I'm sure we'll arrive at what Mr. Shomes meant to say in the first place. In that case, are you ready for the second performance of the day? Once again, my dear fellows, for your continued delight and wonder, let the curtain rise. For Herlock Sholmes, logic reasoning, spectacular. Act 1. Careful observation. Foam at the mouth of the deceased clearly indicates poison. Next to the victim, we notice a large dining plate which contains soap. Meaningful, of course. Why is a soap set so purposefully out of on a dish? It is like the victim's last supper. Could it be the man was about to eat it with a fork? Now here I go. Well, you can't deny that a fork implies a man was eating something or about to eat something. Yes, that's true. If I were to decide to eat some soap, I should prefer to use a fork rather than attempt with chopsticks. And of course, only half the bar of the soap is left on the plate. But might there not be some other explanation? Something material that proves whether or not the man really ate some soap? Could it be he was about to eat it with a fork? Let's see. Oh, I see something. I see something. There we go. The other piece of soap. Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course. The other piece of soap reveals the answer. It being the other half of the soap on the table. In short, the victim was not eating soap at all. It is obvious, really, for no depth of hunger could drive a man to attempt to eat soap. Even I, with my unquenchable thirst for practical knowledge, only took a single bite. But that begs to question how the man was poisoned, because there's no sign of any food on the table. An excellent observation, Mr. Naruto, and one that furnishes us with the answer we seek. For London's foul smirch was poison. Not the one. Mr. Sholmes is still pushing the soap argument then. Perhaps he's suggesting the man licked the soap rather than ate it. If soap in London is that poisonous, I don't think I want to be washing my hands with it. But there are no signs of any food in this room at all. Of course, food isn't the only thing that passes people's lips, is it? It's this stain. There's a stain over here. Oh. Well, the teacup. Let's see. I guess it's probably just the only thing is just this teacup. Yes! The victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the teacup. Indeed! Cups have been a vessel of choice for practicing poisoners over the centuries. And it would appear that this victim drank every last drop. There's no sign of food anywhere in the room. Which leads us to the immutable conclusion. The cause of death was clearly intoxication due to the ingestion of poison contained in this teacup. Alright, part 2. The cause of death identified. Now we go on to number 2. Let's see, what is the next clue? The single teacup. Ah, the Western vessel for infused hot drinks again. It's already featured heavily in our deduction so far. Yes, we can imagine that shortly before his death, Mr. Shamsbeer was having a drink of tea. There would be nothing remarkable about that, but what troubles me is Mr. Natsume's reaction when he heard Mr. Sholmes suggest it. There's more to this deduction than it seems. We must closely examine the scene of the crime again for some clues. There's a second teacup. Did the man dine and die alone? The other teacup suggests the answer. Yes, there were 2 teacups in this room all along. Ah! In other words, there's a strong indication that at the victim's Last Supper, there was a guest present. At the very least, we could say now with certainty that somebody else was here in this room last night taking tea with the victim. Oh, what are you talking about? Utterly unbelievable, unjustly unreasonable. To draw a conclusion on such meager evidence would be foolish, however, certainly. In which case, what more can we deduce about this possible guest at the table? Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. Do you mean to say you know exactly who was in this room at the time of his death? Indeed. What reveals the answer, of course, is the broken lock. I'm not sure I like where this deduction's going now. I'm afraid it's too late to go back to the halcyon days of eating too much soap. But the identity of the guest who was here last night when the victim passed away is something I have a very bad feeling about. Well, you can try to ignore your feelings, but we can't ignore the truth, Mr. Naruhodo. No, I suppose not. Time to look around again. Let's see. What? I feel like the glasses might be a hint. Empty bottle. Let's see. That's the broken lock. This is a candle. So someone probably brought down... It probably isn't the candle. What gives away the identity? I guess the books. If it's Natsume, it might be the books. Oh, fuck. Oh, no. How am I going to be declared guilty? Oh. Sorry. What in the heck? Oh. What in the heck is it? Who was here last night? Who could it be? What is everything? Oh, examining things. Wait a second. Yeah, because Oh, you can just click on it. The button prompt didn't say that. At first, it seems like the only things in this room are the makeshift stage and the costumes. I overlooked these 3 books initially. I wonder what they are. Let's see. The titles read The Picture of Monsieur Lecoq, Canterbury Yearnings, and A Meal for Gaboro. Wait, I'm sure I've heard those titles before. It could just be an incredible coincidence, but they're the exact same 3 books that Mr. Natsume purchased the other day. What? Yes, on the day of the unfortunate incident when Mrs. Green was stabbed. So Seki-san had just been in the bookshop and bought them. That's right. And now those 3 titles are here in the room of the victim. Yet Mr. Natsume claims he's never been here before. What? What does that mean? You think? I really don't know what to make of it. The pile of familiar books. See, I could have presented it and still gotten the right answer, but I had to look at it in advance. So it just docked me points for things I already had. The answer I already had. Son of a bitch. Indeed. What reveals the answer, of course, is this pile of familiar books. Quite so. It's no mere coincidence that these 3 titles are here in this room. It's the link to the truth. Oh. Mr. Natsume, you purchased these books 4 days ago at the secondhand store. That's just a coincidence. In that case, will you be able to bring the same 3 titles from your own room, will you not? This very moment? No, never, none, non-negotiable. If you can't bring your own copies here, it proves that these 3 books are in fact yours. Having purchased the books 4 days ago and returned to your lodgings, you were arrested the very next day. So you could conceivably have brought in the books here on that evening, but you never mentioned that. In other words, you could have only brought these 3 books here to the victim's room. Last night, having returned to your lodgings after the trial concluded at the Old Bailey. In short, there's only one possible conclusion. The victim died here in his room last night as a result of poisoning. And that's the same night the victim had a visitor. And that visitor was you, Mr. Soseki Natsume. Thus concludes the final act of Herlock Sholmes' great deduction. I mean, it's solved, but what does it solve? What is the conclusion? Elementary, my dear Watson. Not again, not again, not again. Not again! Well then, Mr. Natsume. It would appear you're gonna have to accompany me down to the yard. Oh, but wait. Hold your horses! Yes? Door, key, locked, entry, exit, entirely impossible! He's so flustered he's being even stranger than normal. What? You think that's an alibi? You could have just made a copy. Huh? You live in the same building after all. You have plenty of opportunities, I'm sure. Misery me! Sorry, sir. You'll get your chance to give your side of the story later. The facts speaks for themselves, Mr. Mustache. You horrible Herlock Sholmes. He really has found himself an arch rival now, hasn't he? Come on now, no dilly-dallying. Outside there's a carriage waiting. Locum student Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. I never imagined I'd be in this position again, but you have to help me. Please, I'm innocent. All right, I understand. We'll come to your cell later and talk about it. And one more thing. Oh, yes. My poor little kitty cat. Please give him his breakfast for me. And so, we incriminated Soseki. Thanks for inviting us. His evil curse still apparently unbroken. Soseki-san found himself once again the prime suspect in a case of murder. Thanks to the incriminating deduction of the great detective. My dear fellow, that honor belongs to you. This is your fault. I was perfectly happy blaming the soap. Well, at least that means Inspector Gregson's ass isn't here anymore. We can examine the crime scene in more detail now. Yes, that's right. And, of course. What? Have you forgotten what the inspector mentioned before? It was the landlord, Mr. Garadeb, who discovered Mr. Shamsbeer. Ah, Mr. John Garadeb, yes. I expect we could find him in his sitting room on the top floor as usual. Right. We must remember to go up and talk to him later then. Alright, now to fiddle with this body. This body. Oh, the poor man. So young to die. Do you suppose it was a painful death, being he was poisoned and all? I don't know. All we can do is hope that he'll be reborn to a better life. Yes, I suppose you're right. I wonder. Do you think that putting our hands together in a Japanese prayer will help a British soul? Sorry? I made sure I had a reference at the ready for such an occasion like this. This book is entitled The Beginner's Guide to Praying to the Departed, the British Way. I'll just reread it now. One moment. Man, you're about to read the Necronomicon, Susato. Don't do it. There's quite a spine on that book, isn't there? Be like, we're going to pray, and then that prayer ends up burning the body into ash, revealing that Mr. Shamsbeer was a demon all along. Ooh, spoopy. What is so scary? Oh, let's look at this cup. Ah, one of the teacups that Mr. Shamsbeer and his guests drank from last night. But don't go drinking from them, Mr. Naruhodo. There's a bitter poison inside. I'm not planning on drinking any. Don't worry. Anyway, the cups are both empty. That's true. So one was Mr. Shamsbeer's, and the other must be the cup that Mr. Natsume was drinking from. But Soseki-san wasn't poisoned, of course. Perhaps we should take these so we can examine them in greater detail. The fork isn't examinable. What's this thing? And here we have another disproportionately large machine. This looks like a meter of some kind. Ah, this is a gas meter, I think. It seems that in this district, residents pay for gas as they use it with coins. Ah, I see. Yes, now that you've pointed it out, I can see that there was a slot in here that looks like it would take a coin. So you mean if I put a coin in there? That's right. That would buy you about 2 hours of gas for light and heating. So if you were a poor person with no money, you'd have to sleep in the freezing cold? Yes, or if you were a scatterbrain with no change because you forgot to exchange your money at the bank. Thank goodness there's no meter in our office. Look at these extravagant bright costumes. Somehow they look out of place in this room with its grim shading going-ons. This one looks like the king's attire. A king? I've always dreamed of being a king. Oh, I think you'd be more suited for a feudal lord. A daimyo or such like. With a konmage top knot? Every Japanese man wishes he had a konmage. Konmage. Oh, you look wonderful with one. And you already have a sword. Can you imagine what it would look like if I walked around the streets of London with a chonmage and a sword? Oh, this is from Ladies First. I see. Ooh, what's this? What's this? It looks like a part of an envelope, I think. Yes, I think you might be right. Perhaps it was torn off when the letter was open. Is that significant? Well, it's a little out of place, perhaps. When you look around the room, there's no sign of a letter. Or the rest of the envelope, in fact, is there. Ah, she's right. And yet, here we have a torn off end of an envelope. It just strikes me as unusual. I agree. We better take this, just in case. The torn off end of the envelope has been entered into the court record. Ooh, this burner. This is a gas wall light, isn't it? It must be connected to the gas pipe in the wall. Gas lights, a gas stove? London really is a city of gas. But now that I think about it, Mr. and Mrs. Garrideb have an open fire on the top door, didn't they? Oh yes, you're right. I don't recall seeing a gas stove up there. Well, I much prefer a real fire anyways. It's so much cozier. As we've seen from the outside, the window's completely bricked up. The vestige of a former window tax that Britons had to pay. What strange things they used to tax in Great Britain. I mean, making people pay for the number of windows they had in their property? It's extraordinary. It's heartbreaking to think the poor have to block up their windows just to avoid an unfair tax. Oh, what is it, Miss Susato? If you look closely, the number of bricks is loose. Oh, yes, it looks as though an amateur had broken just a few of them. Was it Shamspeare who did? I wonder. Being the lodger renting this room. Ah, look at this, Mr. Naruhodo. On the outside, there's a little ledge. And there's something on it. What? Outside? I was see soap. There's a lot of soap. Whew. It's so cold outside. You can feel it through this gap. It did snow all last night. It would be cold. But more importantly, what is it on the ledge out there? What are those snow-covered lumps? It's more bars of soap. Soap? What are bars of soap doing lined up on the ledge outside the window? I have no idea. But the pair of them look rather charming like that. Still, that's very strange, isn't it? Bars of soap lined outside the window? I think perhaps we should take one. There are two, after all. Oh dear. I suppose we could. Oh, what's this? Look here at this soap. Ah. Do you see? In the middle there? There's a patch that's a different color. It's sort of transparent, but some sort of fancy design, I suppose. Only in Great Britain. It looks like the Hinomaru flag of Japan, doesn't it? How wonderful. It's probably a very expensive brand. Expensive? And what's it doing in this ramshackle little room? A bar of soap's been discovered. I'm curious, like, if, I can't examine anything further. Looks like you're having a good snoop around, eh? Oh, looks like you're having a good snoop around, eh? Inspector Gregson! Back so soon? After I threw that little fella in the clink, I went and reported this to the Investigation Division. In 5 minutes' time, this place will be cordoned off by the yard. Oh, I see. Well, we'd better be leaving then. Poor Mr. Natsume must be feeling very low, being back in the cell again so soon. I'm sure. We should probably go and... What's wrong, Mr. Naruhodo? Yeah! Oh no, he's alive! Kill him again! Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player. That struts and frets this hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. Now, how soundeth the next part?
What the fuck? It's a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Indeed! Oh, happy day! Walking Dead? Oh, he was alive this whole time.
The fella isn't dead at all.
What was that nonsense he was saying, though? I think, yes, it was from William Shakespeare's Macbeth. A soliloquy from Act 5, Scene 5. Shakespeare. So it was that the victim, Mr. William Shakespeare, came back to life. If the man had indeed been poisoned, it transpired that it hadn't killed him. He was taken in by emergency carriage to a nearby hospital for treatment. And Inspector Gregson evicted us from the scene of the crime, whatever that now was. Whatever you think will happen now? Good question. What a strange situation for Mr. Natsume. Arrested for murder, but then the victim comes back to life. I think that perhaps the victim was never dead in the first place. It seems very likely that Mr. Shakespeare did consume poison as we deduced. But was it an accident, attempted suicide, or attempted murder? Until the truth can be established, I imagine the police will keep Mr. Natsume in custody. I suppose so. Let's hope it doesn't come to anything more than a night in the cells. Oh, what's this? What's the man doing over there? He looks like he's trying to see into Soseki-san's lodgings. Is something wrong, Mr. Naruhodo? Excuse me. Could we have a word? You just ran off. I feel sure I've seen that man somewhere before. Where was it? I do too, but I don't remember. With the exception of the top floor where Mr. and Mrs. Garrett live, all the windows are bricked up. Yes, that's because the old window tax. In order to pay less, the poor members had to fill in many of their windows. But the tax has since been abolished, hasn't it? So the windows could all be opened up again, surely. Unfortunately, it would appear that the residents of this district can't afford to pay to have the work done. Yes, that is a sad state of affairs. Especially for people like poor Natsume, who have to live all cooped up in a windowless room. I suppose that's the price you pay for living in such a cheap accommodation. It all seems rather pointless when you put it like that. The Garrett household, Mr. Natsume's lodgings. Sometimes when I look in the building, I can't help feeling it's a bit slant. It does rather look like it could collapse in even the smallest earthquake, doesn't it? And is it supposed to be haunted as well? I think I might have a hunch as to why Soseki-san is such a hunched back. There's always seems to be a bicycle outside the Garrett residence. I read that bicycles are extremely popular all over Great Britain at the moment, in fact. That one seems very warped, though. Especially the front wheel. Is that to make it more of a challenge to ride, do you think? No, I'm afraid it might just be the result of the rider's incompetence. For the front wheel to be so badly warped, I'm afraid the rider may have been similarly afflicted. Then there's a good chance Mr. Natsume had been practicing on this bicycle, I think. Oh dear, I fear he may be right. Let me see if I can move anywhere. A new location has been added. I guess I'll probably just go inside the Garrett's house. Get his POV on this. Here we are again. The eccentric landlord's eccentric top floor abode. We're here because Mr. Garrett is the one who discovered the incident this morning. Don't forget. Ah! You chaps, eh? Yes, good morning, sir. Thank you for your cooperation in court yesterday. It was quite a trial. As much for Mr. Garrideb as anyone, really. Came straight back here after all the business at the Bailey yesterday. Didn't expect to wake up to more bally nonsense this morning. I wonder if you wouldn't mind telling us exactly what happened, Mr. Garrideb. Yes, I suppose you'd like to know all about the dead loss of an actor chap in the ground floor room. Those were exactly Mr. Gregson words, weren't they? It must have been a real shock for you this morning. I hear that you discovered what had happened. Ah, well, that hopeless actor chap rises at 5 o'clock sharp every morning without fail. But at 5:30 this morning, he still hadn't lit the gas. So I went down and knocked on his door, but no bally answer. And that's when you broke into his room by kicking down the door, right? Well, I called on that rum-looking Japanese chap who do the grunt work, of course. Wasn't it a little premature to kick the door down? The man could have just overslept by half an hour. That's very true, Mr. Naruhodo. If 30 minutes oversleeping warranted such behavior, I'd have to kick your door down every morning. Well, better to be safe than sorry and all that. Is this just me, or is he avoiding our gaze now all of a sudden? Except that was the sorry situation indeed that you found on the far side of the door. The victim's name was Mr. Shamspeare, I believe. Is that right? Yes, William Shamspeare. Took the ground floor room 3 months ago. And how would you describe him? In a word, destitute. Destitute? Well, let's face it, the only redeeming feature of that room is the cheap rent. Anyone wanting to live in a place like this is either broke or has a belly screw loose. So hard to choose which category Soseki-san would fall into. Mr. Naruhodo, that's a little rude. He was doing research as well. Research? Into what? Shakespeare, of course. Shakespeare. Read a few plays from the old bard himself, you know. Romeo and Hamlet and all that. Yes, William Shakespeare is England's most highly regarded classical playwright and author. He's known as Sao in Japanese, as you know, and many of his works have already been translated. It seems incredible that Shakespeare was shortened to Sao, though. Someone was too heavy-handed there. There were a lot of costumes in that victim's room, actually, weren't there? Of course. Mr. Natsume is a scholar of English literature as well. I imagine he and Mr. Shamspeare would have had much in common. Ooh, shipping. Shakespeare interpretation disagreement leads to shocking murder. Let's hope it's not that. Mr. Naruhodo? Really? How rude. After Mitsu Natsume's trial yesterday, you came straight back here, I believe. Didn't you? Did you notice anything strange between him and this? Sorry, I've been tripping up a little bit on my tongue. It keeps on getting stuck. Did you notice anything strange between then and this morning? Well, now, must have been about 6 in the evening by the time I got home. Snow was coming down rather heavily, as I remember. It was completely dark already. That failed actor chap was out at that time. Mr. Garrideb noticed there's no lights in his room or something, I suppose. Couldn't summon the energy for anything much, so I sat in front of the fire up here.
It was after 8 before Shamesbury got back, and the chap was up until past 1 this morning, I'll have you know. Suppose he met his end sometime after that. I was asleep by then, so I'm rather in the dark there.
Well, thank you. That's very illuminating. Is everything alright, Mr. Sato? Well, I was just thinking it's a little strange is all. Mr. Gardev, you were up here in your room all evening if I understood, correct?
Not a big fan of stairs. Not with this blasted leg.
Then, how is it that you seem to know? The precise movements of your tenant on the ground floor, I mean. That's a very good point. I can't imagine you would hear the noise from the ground floor all the way up here. Does this old man like to spy on his tenants? Is that it?
I say, I know what you're thinking, and it's a bally outrage. I'm ex-military, don't you know? I don't go around spying on my tenants. Why would I?
Then how do you know Mr. Gardev?
It's a gas, woman. The gas tells me everything.
The gas? What on earth do you mean, sir? How can the gas tell you everything, let alone anything?
Well, as you're probably aware, the gas is supplied from the pipes of the building.
Yes, I'd more or less worked that out. Every room in the building is connected by a single pipe to the gas main line outside, and the gas company supplies gas to properties via the main. Yes, I understand that too.
Let me see if I can explain. Let's say I was to light the gas lamps up here. What do you suppose would happen?
Well, obviously the room would be brighter.
Exactly, but at the same time, the lights in all the other rooms outside would dim for a moment.
What? They dim? Why? Perhaps it's because when you light a gas lamp, it briefly uses more gas than usual, and that reduces the amount of gas in the pipe for other lamps that are connected to it. That might explain why the other lamps dim momentarily, might it? Yes, of course, because everything's connected to a simple supply pipe. Is that supposed to happen, though? It sounds rather undesirable.
Jolly good point. The fact is, the gas company's pipes in these parts are pretty hopeless, long worn out, and barely got any gas in them to start with. Opposite's always true, of course. Extinguish the lamps up here and they glow brighter than the rest of the house.
Ah, right. I see. So by watching the flickering of the lights in one room, you can determine what's happening elsewhere.
You've got it.
Oh, of course. Because when people come back home in the evening and before they go to sleep at night, what they're guaranteed to do is either light or put out the lamps and fires. Clever.
In point of fact, the room on the ground floor and the one above it uses different amounts of gas. By watching the lights in here closely, I can work out almost exactly what's going on in the whole house.
Gosh, that's fascinating, Mr. Gardev. Absolutely fascinating.
Oh, well, nothing to it, really.
And I can't really see that it's going to help us in this case either. What I'd like to know is, why is Mr. Gardev so interested in what his tenants are up to in the first place? I feel like there's more to it than idle curiosity. Well, we've done as much investigating here as we can, I think. Perhaps we ought to go to the prison and speak with Mr. Natsume again. A good idea.
Let's move on to prison. Let's make our way on over. So, this is going to be a very awkward thing to announce, but yeah, your roommate is kind of alive. We framed you.
Look, Mr. Naruhodo. Mr. Natsume, have the police finished questioning you now?
Look, I'm a student, Mr. Naruhodo Esquire.
Oh, yes?
What does he tell me? Is he a ghost? Is he here to haunt me?
Let me guess. You're talking about Mr. Sholmes. He actually calls himself a great detective, Mr. Natsume, not a ghost.
But his diabolical deductions, they're not of this world. They've left me. Ah, I'm cursed. I'm cursed, I tell you.
Well, that sort of hurts. Credit where credit's due, Mr. Naruhodo. You were heavily involved in the deduction too. Yes, moving on. We have some wonderful news.
Oh?
The victim that we all thought was dead has come back to life again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with the absolute worst case, you could only be tried for attempted murder. That's great, isn't it, Mr. Natsume?
It's terrible.
Oh?
I'm stuck in the cell, suffering for some silly wrong end of the stick. You did it, didn't you? Confess, you're a killer. Why the mustache? Constant questions.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yet selfish shyster. Make up your mind. Are you dead or alive? If you're gonna come back, why bother dying? A wickedly wishy-washy William.
Well, it seems likely that Mr. Shamspeare was never dead in the first place.
Oh, yes. That might make sense. I'm pleased that he's alive, of course. Our lively debate last night was much fun. It'd be sad to think it was our last. Oh. Oops.
Mr. Natsume, does this mean that you did see the victim last night? You met with Mr. Shamspeare, didn't you?
I'm not saying another word. I demand have a lawyer present.
Who do you think I am? Please, Mr. Natsume, we need to hear your side of the story.
Why am I cursed like this?
Can you tell us what exactly happened last night, Mr. Natsume?
There's nothing to tell. But, Mr. Naruhodo Esquire, I'm eternally grateful for you helping me out with the cursed case yesterday.
The case that saw Miss Poor Green hospitalized after she ended up with a knife in her back. It's hard to believe that only yesterday all that happened.
After the trial was over, I trudged my weary way back to my lowly lodgings. And that evening, at 9:30 it must have been, I visited Shamspeare.
So you did go to the victim's room then? As we feared.
I didn't do anything wrong. I'd never been to his room before. It was the first time.
Then what made you decide to go?
I bumped into him when I arrived back at the house. We got chatting and it developed into a discussion. But he had to go out, so I bade him farewell.
That ties in with what Mr. Garrett said, that the victim went out and came back after 8.
We met again later that evening, at around 9 and just after, when I took him some nice tea I'd brew it as a gift.
So it was you who brought the tea that he'd clearly drunk at the scene then. And I suppose you were discussing the works of Shakespeare, weren't you?
Yes, that's right.
that's exactly right. Romeo and Juliet. Who was the stronger? It was a delightful debate. I'm sure. It's such a stimulating subject, Shakespeare. And the debate became pretty heated as you slipped poison into Mr. Shamspeare's tea. No! Never! Not at all! Team Juliet won. That was me. And when I left this room, the flamboyant fellow was fighting fit. I swear it. Categorically. Mr. Natsume, you often say that same thing about yourself, I notice. That you have a cursed existence. I'm sure I mentioned this to you before, but I've been here in Great Britain for a year now, and in that time I've learned that it's no place for me. It can be very trying to live in a foreign land and adapt to the ways of another culture. There are foreigners everywhere I look. They all stare at me. They all laugh. That's the impression I get whenever I go out. It makes me scared to leave my room. Which is why I've become a recluse. But even in my room, I find no respite from my fears. I moved more times than I can remember. Then 1 week ago, I moved into Briar Road. But why, I mean? Why did you choose that place? It doesn't seem very comfortable. Because the rent is cheap. I have so little money. It spoke to me. The rent? Obviously, there's a reason why it's cheap. Because the room is cursed. Cursed? Cursed how? The previous occupant, the man who lived here before and I took the room from, died there. Oh no! He was only a young man, but one morning he was found dead. No one could explain why. Surely no one would want to live in a room with a history like that. I didn't. When the letting agent recommended the place, I wavered. But I want books, and books cost money. A horrible history is a small price to pay. When I realized it could mean I could buy more books, I signed the lease like lightning. Brave, or blinkered. But after I moved in, I soon came to realize what I'd done. I realized how horrible that room's history really was. Gosh, was it really so awful? How did the room's horrible history affect you, Mr. Natsume? What happened? At first, it was just a feeling of beady eyes boring in my back, watching me. Do you think that might have just been your mind playing tricks on you? No. My mind doesn't know any tricks. It was something else. It's been one long nightmare ever since I was given the keys to the place. A nightmare? You've been having bad dreams, you mean? All the souls who died in that room, I lean over in my sleep and try to strangle me. That really is horrible. And now I come to think of it, it happened last night again too, I think. The very same night that Mr. Shamespeare is writhing in pain and agony from the poison in his body. I was on the verge of being suffocated silently by those miserable spirits in the room. You simply must move out of that room as soon as possible. Yes, you're right, I know it. And that's why I'm already searching for the next room with the history to call home. I think perhaps you should try to avoid accommodation with any kind of history at all. Otherwise, I'm scared that you'll find you yourself may become history. Susato-san sure knows how to make the man listen. Of course. Mr. Lord of the Manor is worried about the curse in my room as well. You mean Mr. Garrett? Yes. He knows that if people keep dying there, he'll never be able to rent it out again. Well, that is true. I, for one, wouldn't go near a murder house. Ah! Perhaps. That may explain why the landlord pays so much attention to the gas lamps and the tenants' movements. You mean because he's worried about their well-being? He does seem to have an unusually keen interest on the amount of gas in the pipes. There must be a reason why he keeps such close tabs on the occupants of his Let's rooms. What do you mean? He pays so much attention to the gas lamps. Oh dear, no. It's nothing to do with you, Mr. Natsume. Please, forget what I said. Oh, now you're talking about me behind my back as well. What's important is that Mr. Shamsbeer isn't dead at all. Once he comes around, he'll be able to tell us what happened. We'll be able to get you released. Yes, please. Oh, I do hope you're correct. Excuse me. Inspector Gregson. I couldn't help overhearing what you said. And on that note, I have some good news. And some bad news. Oh. Which you want first? Always, every time, the bad news first. When hope is all you have, hold on to it. That is my guiding principle. Right, well, in that case, the good news it is. Huh? Sorry, but it's just a lot easier to explain everything that way. Then why'd you ask me for my preference? Well, as you may have heard, Mr. Shakespeare says the Countess. He's come around now. Yes, we all saw it happen in its terrifying glory. He's still being treated by doctors, but we managed to get a written statement out from him already. Oh, isn't that wonderful, Mr. Natsume? Oh, thank goodness. It's all over then. I can leave this somber cell. Sorry, no. That's not on the cards. What? Why ever not, Inspector? Mr. Shamsbeer has implicated someone as being responsible for what happened last night. Implicated someone? Oh dear. You don't mean... I'm sorry to say I do, yes. He pointed the finger at you, Mr. Natsume. Ah! By sweet poison did he seeketh to end my life. That wicked caliph, Soseki Natsume. No! So I'm afraid you'll be appearing in court as planned. You'll be wanting to make the necessary preparation. And so, once again, Soseki-san found himself having to take the dock in the Old Bailey. Whether his room was haunted, or whether he was just terribly unlucky, I knew I had no chance. The following day, I would represent him in court, and I'd do my utmost to break the curse that blighted him. To be cunty. Save your current progress? Man. It's like the musical notes in this are very, like, the difference between night and day. Part of me is not sure if I should, like, kind of, like, end a little early so that the next time around if it, like, gets to the courthouse. Like, what's it called? I'll be able to have that all prepped up and ready to go for next time. I think I might, like, go to the bathroom, but while I'm there, let this music play out. And I will be resting in the bathroom. Yeah, I think I, yeah, I think I'll probably head out for tonight. I think I got quite a bit done. I got pretty far into it, and what's it called? I want to save it for the next time around. But I would like to thank everyone who could come, who arrived, for coming and arriving. I will be poking my beauty mark, poking the mic, and sending out all kinds of good vibes for whoever's next. Who's next? Let me see. Is there anyone to raid? Is there anyone to raid? That is going to be a mm, mm, mm. I don't see anybody. I really don't. Actually, yeah, maybe I'll jump on over to kites. Let's see. My what's it called? My my creator is what's it called? Having a stream, and I want to be able to support them. So let me try to get this hooked up a bit. Let me remember raid space. That is I should probably do my caps. Oh shit. Oops. Let's see. Slash raid and then sorry, new keyboard. New keyboard, new messiness. A raid has been created. Let me open up this page. Hold on, let me open up Google for a moment. Let me open this up. Let me open up my thing so I could follow it on desktop. Let me show up. What? I'm doing great.